Hey everybody. This video is going to go over the first essay that you have to read for the arguing value exercise sample essays. So this is the video that's going to go over the education of Ms. Groves. So after reading the essay, you were supposed to answer a handful of questions, and the first question for this essay was, what is the main claim? So towards the beginning of the essay, you may have thought that the claim was the education of Ms. Groves, which recently aired on Dateline NBC, illustrates the dangers of mixing news and entertainment, investigative reporting, and storytelling. And that is very close to what the claim is, but a little bit further on, we actually get a statement that is much more specific to what the author is really trying to show in this essay. And that was, while NBC claims to be chronicling a new teacher's first year, it edits and oversimplifies in a way that reinforces harmful misconceptions about teaching and learning. That is what the author was really trying to get at with this essay. Not just showing that NBC Dateline or Dateline NBC is mixing up, is blurring the lines between news and entertainment. We're really looking at how this one particular episode is causing harm in terms of how people view education. That it edits and oversimplifies, right? So, then you have to ask, what should investigative news programs do for viewers? If he's saying that this is doing the opposite of that, if it's not doing a good job, what should it be doing? What should investigative news reports really be doing for us? And how does this particular episode fall short? Well, he's saying that they focus on the news. They should focus on the news and not just entertainment, that they should focus on investigative reporting and not just storytelling, and that they should give an in-depth analysis of the complexities of whatever subject they're doing the report on. This episode does not do any of those things. In fact, it does the opposite. It does not give an in-depth analysis, and it really doesn't look at any of the complexities involved in the topic that's being discussed in the program, right? The line of reasoning, the premises that he uses in the essay, he talks about the elements of a story and how this particular episode of Dateline NBC follows the elements of a story, right? Because he's saying that they should be focused more on investigative news reporting and not on storytelling. So he's going to say, okay, here's what storytelling encompasses. Here's what a story typically has, all the elements of a story. And look, it has all of those elements in this episode. So it is doing storytelling when it shouldn't be, right? He says that he goes on to say the crisis is complex, but the resolution of the story is very oversimplified. The resolution is the end of the story, right? We have the setting, we have the buildup, we have the climax, then we have the resolution where everything sort of falls into place at the end. And he's saying that in the resolution portion of the story of the education of Miss Groves, it completely oversimplifies the problem that's being discussed, right? She was a first-year teacher, totally unprepared for it, not having very much success. And they give us this really simple, quaint, easy ending to it, and there's so much more to it than that. They totally oversimplified it. He says because of this, because it oversimplified that resolution, the ending, the show makes two big mistakes. First, it oversimplifies what it does talk about. So all the things that it includes, it talks about the father in prison and the homelessness issues that students face. It oversimplifies those things, but it also completely leaves out all of the other very messy contributing factors to why students have a struggle in the classroom and why teachers sometimes struggle to teach these students, right? So they completely leave out a lot of the reasons, and then the reasons they do discuss, they completely oversimplify them. And he knows that shows have to be edited, but this episode ended up in a logical fallacy, a straw person fallacy. The straw person fallacy causes viewers to make very simple, quick judgments and come to quick conclusions that either training the teachers is easy or it's okay because it all worked out in the end, right? So then this could lead viewers to think that teaching is easy and that they should try it because all they have to do is learn some tricks, right? But most viewers will realize that the episode and this issue were oversimplified. They'll see how it's no different than other types of TV dramas and reality shows, right? I've never actually seen the episode, but it sounds pretty horrendous. In fact, the complex issues ignored in the episode actually originate with the media. That's his next line of reasoning. How kids grow up these days, the influence of media, that kids and adults are not comfortable with silence. There's always a lot of noise, and that the media is responsible for that noise, and there's no magic way to get them to deal with the noise, right? NBC creates the noise. They're part of the media. They create the noise, but then they choose to ignore how that noise, how the media factors into the problems in our education system. So Dateline simply shows us a struggling first-year teacher, and we know she's failing because the test scores are low. And then they show us how easy it is to correct those errors and make students successful, right? That's his line of reasoning. He takes us from the elements of storytelling all the way through that to where they failed, how they failed. So we're looking next at, after the line of reasoning, we want to talk about where he concedes any points, right? Does he talk about a counter argument? Does he offer any concessions? Does he offer a rebuttal or any kind of qualifiers? How is he dealing with the opposition in the essay? So the first thing he does is it did talk about two outside factors. The fact that we had like a parent in prison and then some students who were homeless actually. So he concedes that point. They actually do talk about some of those outside factors. He also admits that learning some tips and tricks of the trade in any profession is a good idea, right? So he's not knocking that the principal gave the teacher some tricks to use in the classroom. He's not saying that was a bad thing. That's good. Everybody wants to know what the tricks of the trade are in any profession. And then he also makes a concession when he talks about how the show was edited. He concedes the point that, of course, a 1-hour TV show can't cover everything. It has to be edited in some way. So he makes those points. How do they relate to his views? Well, he's saying it's not enough, right? Basically, he's saying, sure, you're making a good point, but it's not enough. It's more complex than that. You need to go deeper. So he alludes to several television dramas and sitcoms and how do they make a point about an investigative report on Dateline NBC. Well, it was all just a silly sitcom moment. The fact that she didn't know those tricks of the trade, and it was an oversight on her part by not asking for those tricks of the trades before the school year started. It was all just a silly misunderstanding that could have been avoided had she just asked for them sooner rather than later. Trying to be storytellers took them into the realm of TV dramas. Their lack of complexity took them into the realm of reality TV shows, right? Like Super Nanny and Wife Swap. They're taking these really big issues and they're just presenting them in very simple ways without the realness, even though they're reality shows. And that's what he's trying to say here. He compares them. He brings up Super Nanny and Wife Swap because he's trying to say that the fact that they didn't go into the complexities of the education system, it's more in the realm of reality TV now. So storytelling and reality TV, because they chose to oversimplify the entire issue of the show. The last question was his understanding of logical fallacies and why is it important for, as far as support for his argument. He points out that straw person fallacy, and he points out how the negative effects of oversimplifying the issue. And even if we disagree with him about some of his supporting points, we can't really argue against a fallacy. We can't really disagree with him. If he's able to point out that a logical fallacy was used, then that helps strengthen his argument because he's pointing out the faults of the opposition. And if you're pointing out faults in their point of view, in what they are presenting, then it helps strengthen your own argument. I think it's a really good example of an argument of value. He's looking at one particular episode of Dateline NBC. I'm sure he could write an essay. Maybe it would need to be a longer piece on the whole program, on Dateline NBC as a whole. But to keep within the time constraints and the idea of keeping people's attention, he focused on one single episode of Dateline NBC to show how that program fails at what it's supposed to be doing, why it is not quality news reporting value. This was just one of 3 essays that you read for that had a claim of value, that were arguing value. If you have any additional questions or comments about the education of Ms. Groves, please let me know. Otherwise, you can go ahead and watch the follow-up video on the next essay.